If there's a silver lining in this, it's that there are lots of drugs that are antiviral to greater or lesser degrees that could be used to treat it. And as long as these generic antivirals are being suppressed because they're cheap, we have a big problem. That is the problem. In fact, Congress set out to block that problem in the 21st Century Cures Act in 2016, which in Section 3022 says that regulatory agencies shall use all available evidence for deciding upon approval of agents and not just randomized controlled trials. Of course, FDA totally ignored that. They sailed through that, demanding randomized trials of hydroxychloroquine. But that's what Congress intended because of large amounts of public pressure that FDA was demanding randomized trials, which was putting a stranglehold on the development of new medications, mostly for cancer. But it applies also now to repurposed generic medications, that we need an avenue of combating the pharma stranglehold on randomized trials or nothing, and that only medications can be used if they've been randomized trialed at $5 to $10 million or more of it per trial, which means no generic medication will ever be done that way. And so this is our roadblock, that there are medications, there are antivirals that are dogma from medical school that viruses have no treatments. Well, AIDS has a treatment, it has antivirals, but we've learned that viruses, there is no single magic bullet for a virus, that you approach a virus by multiple drugs all at the same time to clobber it. And AIDS showed that, and what we've learned now is SARS-CoV-2 has exactly the same features. SARS-CoV-2 is not the last virus we're going to fight. And so we need to have this ability to use medications that work for viruses, just like we have them that work for bacteria. We've got to be trying and using all these things and fighting back against the tyranny of pharma to suppress the ability to treat viruses until it gets to their level of economic benefit.
There's maybe some silver lining here, because I think a pretty significant portion of the population has been alerted to the fact that there's all sorts of treatments for all sorts of things that were not the orthodox way, but nonetheless, you know, there were medical practitioners, and even in plain sight, scientific literature that would say, oh, look, this can work for this situation.
Right. And there is really a whole subversive industry opening up to do this. Doctors who are treating COVID and other things with their best knowledge, in spite of the formal consensus statements of this medical society and that the American Society of X doctors and the American Society of Y doctors and whatever. And they're contrived and fake consensus statements that have no bearing on the reality of it. That's only because they would lose their pharma funding, you know, if they don't say that or they say something else. And the whole corrupt medical system is just the rate limiting step for acquiring adequate supported medical knowledge of how to treat various diseases that we've been coping with for 3 years or 30 years or longer.
So what do you see as the best way to, you know, for lack of a better term, normalize this type of approach to drugs as you've been outlining here?
So, you know, the marketplace dies without competition. What we need is competition in the marketplace, in all things medical. That's why alternative doctors groups that are using these methods that work, that get into the public domain, knowledge of them gets into the public domain, where patients can choose to go to their orthodox practitioner and be limited to consensus, you know, checklist medicine, or to their unorthodox practitioner who uses best available, all available evidence medicine. And people should be able to have that choice, freely make that choice, and then we'll see what happens to the orthodox medicine and how it copes with competition. And of course, it'll first work by smearing the unorthodox competition. And you know, when rational people see smear is not counter evidence, then you know, the competition will improve, and then eventually the orthodox medicine will have to modulate into doing better than it does.
So, there's some hurdles, as you're kind of intimating here. What's the single best thing that could happen now to help overcome these in your mind? Because people are watching.
Public pressure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Public pressure. People voting with their feet, voting with their wallets, choosing the course of medical care that they want, and choosing the course of outrage against the system as it is that they want. That, to me, the control of medicine into substandard medical care because of enforcement of checklists of generic ways of treating people and not as individuals has crippled quality medical care. And it gets away with it because of enforcement and because of lack of competition. So many doctors today have been, primary care and internists and family care and so on, first line care medicine, have been bought up by practices, by corporate medicine, who enforce treatment limitations. You can't treat COVID patients, all these kinds of things that, well, how would you ever, as a patient, get medical care that you need if you're part of a care system that says you can't be treated for things that are treatable, right? You vote with your feet. You write a letter or you put an angry call to the CEO of that healthcare system, tell them you're leaving, and you go and find care somewhere else that treats you as a real person with dignity and compassion and good quality care.